This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
Diplomacy Chief Ahmed Attaf has reaffirmed in Johannesburg Algeria's full support for the four priorities defined by the President of the Republic of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, in his opening address to the first ministerial meeting of the G20. The Speaker of the People's National Assembly and Speaker of the Arab Interparliamentary Union, Mr. Brahim Boughali, has been received in Cairo, Egypt, to preside over the 7th Conference of Arab Parliaments and Speakers of Arab Parliaments and Assemblies. A new batch of Palestinian and Israeli prisoners were today released by the Palestinian Hamas movement and the Israeli occupation authorities, respectively, as part of a fragile ceasefire. And the UN Security Council has for the first time condemned Rwanda for its support to the offensive launched by the so-called M23 rebel group against the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. First in our news, the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has reaffirmed in Johannesburg, South Africa, Algeria's support for the four priorities defined by the President of the Republic of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, in his opening address to the first ministerial meeting of the G20, praising the special interest he gives to Africa's needs and aspirations. Mr. Attaf stressed Algeria's full support for the four priorities defined by the South African president and hailed the special interest he has shown to the continent's needs and aspirations. Let's listen to him.
Algeria fully supports the four priorities outlined by President Cyril Ramaphosa in his opening statement. We particularly commend the special emphasis he puts on Africa's needs and aspirations. Algeria believes that time has come to seriously tackle the major impediments and hurdles to Africa's stability, development, and integration. In this regard, three endeavors that are, in my view, of strategic dimension and nature deserve our full attention.
During this session, which was devoted to presenting the G20's objectives for 2025 and South Africa's priorities for its presidency of the group, Mr. Attaf also said that Algeria believed that it was high time to seriously tackle the major challenges and obstacles hindering Africa's stability, development, and integration. He stressed the need of focusing on three strategic objectives.
The first among them is that of reforming the international financial and monetary institutions. We need institutions that are representative of today's world and which can respond timely and efficiently to the variety of challenges affecting developing nations, notably African nations. The second among these strategic endeavors relates to the urgent need to address Africa's debt crisis to meet its development requirements. Africa needs the strong support of the G20 in this regard to navigate through the compounding crisis of financial distress, climate change, food insecurity, and persistent conflicts. And may I add that Africa should not be left behind the ongoing revolutions that are reshaping the future of mankind in energy transition, numerization, and in artificial intelligence. The third and last among these strategic endeavors is related to the pressing imperative of fulfilling international commitments in terms of promoting financial support, partnerships, capacity building, and technology transfer to accelerate the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals and the Agenda 2063 aspiration.
Mr. Attaf added that Algeria welcomes South Africa's initiative to set up three working groups on inclusive economic growth, food security, and artificial intelligence, adding that Algeria believes that such an approach is capable of giving a new impetus to the way pressing global issues and challenges are managed. Let's listen to Mr. Attaf again.
In this regard, Algeria welcomes the initiative of South Africa to establish three task forces dealing respectively with inclusive economic growth, food security, and artificial intelligence. We believe that such an initiative holds the potential of creating a new momentum in dealing with global pressing issues and challenges. We equally believe that such an initiative will give more substance, ensure more effectiveness, and render more meaningful the international cooperation for global development.
You are listening to the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf. The Minister of State of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has held talks in Johannesburg with several of his counterparts from the countries taking part in the G20 ministerial meeting. Mariam Barsha has more details.
The Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, discussed with his Chinese counterpart ways of achieving more positive results by strengthening the strategic partnership between Algeria and China, notably by consolidating cooperation in the economic field and pursuing joint coordination and mutual support within the UN Security Council and international fora. The Minister of State also examined with his Turkish counterpart the various axes and dimensions of the privileged cooperation existing between the two countries in the run-up to the third session of the Joint Planning Commission, while discussing developments in the situation in the Middle East, notably the Palestinian issue. During the meeting with his Indian counterpart, the two ministers held the positive dynamic in relations between the two countries in recent years. On the occasion, the two parties discussed the possibility of taking advantage of the forthcoming meeting of the Joint Government Committee to further promote bilateral relations, given the potential of the two countries. With his Norwegian counterpart, Mr. Ahmed Attaf discussed ways of maintaining the momentum of economic cooperation between the two countries, discussing international efforts in favor of the two-state solution as the basis for a just and definitive settlement of the Palestinian question. The Minister of State's talk with the Korean Foreign Minister was also an opportunity to examine the exceptional results of cooperation between the two countries, notably in the economic and technological fields. The two parties also stressed the need to continue consultation within the UN Security Council, notably within the framework of the elected members group E10. Minister Ahmed Attaf reviewed with his Japanese counterpart the ways in which the advantages and strength of both countries could be exploited, with a view to raising Algerian-Japanese relations to even higher levels, particularly following the activation of the bilateral Joint Economic Committee.
Earlier, the Minister of State for Foreign Affairs, the National Community Abroad and African Affairs, Mr. Ahmed Attaf, has held talks in Johannesburg with the Middle East, with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, European Union and Cooperation of the Kingdom of Spain, José Manuel Alvarez Bueno, on the sidelines of the G20 ministerial meeting. On the occasion, the Spanish minister reiterated his thanks to the Algerian authorities for their effective contribution to the release of the Spanish national Navarro Canada Joaquim last January, highlighting his country's support for Algeria's role in strengthening stability and promoting development in the Sahel-Saharan region. The two parties also examined ways of boosting the bilateral relations by strengthening mutual trust and promoting bilateral cooperation. The 19th session of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Mediterranean PAM, in which Algeria was represented by a joint delegation from the two chambers of parliament, has wound up in the Italian capital, Rome. Mariam Barsha has more details.
A press release from the Upper House of Parliament indicated that the participants to the two-day session adopted the reports and decisions of the PAM standing committees. The Algerian delegation contributed to the intense debates with a series of proposals. The session was an opportunity to listen to the presentations of a number of experts on several issues of interest to the Mediterranean peoples, in addition to the election of the President of the Chamber of Deputies of Italy, Mr. Giulio Centimero, as the new president of the PAM. During the session, Algeria, represented by the CEO of the Sonelgaz Group, Mourad Adjem, won the PAM Excellence Award, called the 2025 PAM Sustainability Award, for its contributions to strengthening Euro-Mediterranean cooperation in the field of renewable and sustainable energies, during a ceremony held in the presence of the Algerian ambassador to Italy, Mr. Mohamed Khalifi.
The Speaker of the People's National Assembly and Speaker of the Arab Inter-Parliamentary Union, Mr. Brahim Boughali, has been received by the Speaker of the Arab Parliament, Mr. Mohammed Ahmed Ali Yamahi, in Cairo, Egypt, where he will be presiding over the 7th Conference of Arab Parliaments and Speakers of Arab Parliaments and Assemblies, with a wide participation of Arab parliaments. The conference will result in the adoption of a draft unified Arab parliamentary document entitled An Arab Parliamentary Document Supporting the Resilience of the Palestinian People on Their Land, Rejecting Plans for Deportation and Annexation, and Thwarting Attempts to Liquidate the Palestinian Question. Evoking the displacement plan targeting the Palestinians, the member of the Arab Parliament, Hassan Barghouti, reiterated the Arab MPs' unwavering support and position regarding the Palestinian issue. Let's listen to him.
Of course, as everybody knows, the Arab Parliament has always and continuously addressed the Palestinian cause. There is a committee devoted to the issue, and the Arab Parliament has always and in all fora defended and supported the Palestinian issue. As everybody knows, there are some statements made by some presidents concerning the displacement of the Palestinians. This is groundless and totally unacceptable and worthless. To the contrary, the Arab Parliament backs and firmly supports the resistance of the Palestinians and their presence on their land and support the liberation of Al-Quds Sharif.
And a new batch of Palestinian and Israeli prisoners were today released by the Palestinian Hamas movement and the Israeli occupation authorities, respectively, as part of the 7th hostage prisoner swap and the first phase of a fragile ceasefire. 6 Israeli hostages were released in return for 602 Palestinian ones. Since the ceasefire brokered by Qatar, Egypt and the United States came into effect, 19 Israeli detainees have been released from Gaza in exchange for more than 1,100 Palestinian detainees released from Israeli prisons at a rate of 1 exchange per week. Hamas said on Wednesday that it is prepared to release the remaining detainees in one batch, not in successive batches, during the second phase of the truce agreement, which is supposed to begin on March 2nd. Several diplomats have announced in Brussels that European Union countries will suspend their sanctions against Syria on Monday. The foreign affairs ministers of the 27 meeting in Brussels on Monday will formally decide on the suspension following an agreement already reached at their previous meetings in January. The sanctions concern the banking, energy, and transport sectors. To Africa now, where the UN Security Council has for the first time ever condemned Rwanda for its support to the offensive launched by the so-called M23 rebel group against the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, urging for an immediate withdrawal of its troops from the area. In a resolution unanimously adopted, the Council condemned the advanced achievement by the rebel group in the North and South Kivu areas thanks to the support provided by the Rwandan Defense Forces. It called on the Rwandan forces to stop backing the M23 rebels, which it stressed must withdraw immediately and without any prerequisites from the territories under its control. In this connection, Algeria's representative to the UN, Toufiq Qudri, reiterated Algeria's call for a de-escalation and for a resumption of negotiations to end the conflict.
Algeria expresses its deep concerns at the situation prevailing in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of the Congo and calls for an end to the hostilities and for a de-escalation in the districts of North and South Kivu, particularly in the towns of Goma and Bukavu. We also reiterate our call on all the parties at issue to immediately cease fire and return to the negotiating table as part of the processes agreed on by the African Union in order to save lives and prevent an extension of the conflict to the region.
This came as the rebel group recently took control of Bukavu after it captured the major town of Goma. And the Moroccan authorities have intensified since early 2025 their repression in Western Sahara, preventing access to foreign observers and independent organizations, and human rights violations there are systematically documented by international NGOs, despite Morocco's attempts to stifle any dissenting voices. Marim Barsha has more details.
With this climate of increased restrictions, the Moroccan authorities have once again illustrated their desire to block the access to the territory by banning entry to occupied El Aaiún to 3 EU MPs on Thursday, who were expelled upon their arrival from the Canary Islands under the pretext of not having permits. They were prevented from investigating human rights violations and the illegal exploitation of Sahrawi resources. This escalation has triggered firm reactions by political and human rights organizations. The Polisario Front denounced this ban, criticizing a policy of lockdown aimed at preventing an independent investigation into the abuses committed against the Sahrawis. He called on the European Union to lodge an official complaint against Morocco and to take measures to guarantee the freedom of movement of its representatives. For its part, the collective of Sahrawi defenders of human rights in Western Sahara, CODESA, strongly condemned the MP's expulsion, stressing that Morocco seeks to impose an information blockade. Several human rights organizations, such as Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, have denounced these obstacles to independent monitoring. According to their reports, since 2014, more than 300 people from 21 countries have been expelled from the territory. Norway and Spain come on top of the list with 133 expulsions and 105 expulsions, respectively. The ban on visits to Western Sahara thus demonstrates Morocco's desire to stifle any dissenting voice and to impose a strict information blockade. However, far from achieving its objective, such a strategy paradoxically contributes to strengthening the mobilization in favor of the Sahrawi people.
That's the end of our news bulletin. We leave you now with our weekly programs with my colleague Mariam Barshi and Jamal Salmani. I'll meet you again tomorrow for a fresh edition of our news bulletin. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Echoes of Time. I'm your host Mariam Barshi, and today we travel along the legendary Silk